Hey everyone, welcome to the Get Your Life Together Girl podcast. I'm your host, Danielle Van. As a cognitive behavioral therapist, life coach to women, and author, I've spent my life studying and learning from the stories that make us human. It's my passion and goal to help you shift your mindset and create a lifelong revolution to help you reach your greatest potential. In this week's episode, we take on our relationship with work and family while trying to achieve and be, quote, good enough mothers with retired neonatologist Dr. Susan Landers. She walks us through the lessons she learned about work-life balance as a high-achieving physician, which has now been parlayed into a mission to educate women to show up as their best selves, be present, and own their accomplishments as wives, mothers, and career-driven women. Dr. Landers takes us on a journey to nourish our souls through family and work. The Get Your Life Together Girl podcast starts right now.
Oh, Danielle, it's really wonderful to be here with you. I am a retired neonatologist. I worked for 34 years in the NICU, taking care of premature babies and full-term babies who got sick, kids with congenital malformations. I loved my work. I worked in a NICU in Houston at Texas Children's, then in Little Rock at Arkansas Children's, and then at Seton Medical Center and Dell Children's in Austin, Texas. So I've had 3 different practice locations. I've been married for 38 years. My husband and I raised 3 children, both working full-time. He's also a physician, a pediatric nephrologist, and I was lucky to have a physician who could do everything for my kids when I wasn't around, because I learned as I had children and practiced full-time that I was gone a lot. There was a lot of in-hospital night call. You have to be in the NICU. You can't just take call from home. So when I was gone, he would do everything that was necessary for our 3 children. I feel like I made a lot of progress and I made a lot of mistakes as a working mother. And I love to talk to young working mothers, especially professional moms, because I think they strike out trying to be perfect like I did.
Amen to that.
Amen. Yeah. And then they have children and they've got this career, and then, reality hits and you figure out you cannot do everything. And you try to juggle the things that you need to do. And for me, it was over a stretch of, 6 to 10 years, I learned what I was capable of doing. I learned how to get the help I needed. Mm-hmm. I learned when to specifically ask my husband for help that I needed, but he generally deferred to me with all the things that had to do with nannies or children or teachers or coaches or teams, whatever. It took me a while to admit that I could not handle everything. And I did eventually learn to delegate quite a bit. I think working mothers go through so many different phases depending on what they're doing at work and depending on the ages and stages of their kids. Yes. I thought the years when kids were young were really pretty easy compared to middle school and high school.
Yes.
And even now, compared to young adulthood, working mothers are challenged every step of the way, not only from their jobs, but also from their children's needs. I don't know how many kids you have, but with 3, I learned that each child presents this amazing, different set of challenges.
Oh, absolutely. I'm a mom of 3 as well, and I can speak that rhythm all day long.
Yes. My easiest baby was the worst teenager. The easiest kid at 4 was the most challenging at 12. And my son, who was very, very bright, was always kind of geeky and had needs that were totally different from his sisters. And I love seeing my daughter, my older daughter, be a mother.
Mhm.
I didn't realize what a kick I would get out of that. So I developed this Instagram account and a Facebook group, particularly for young mothers, for working mothers. I love following all their activities and I love watching them be working mothers. Oh, here's a great little anecdote. My daughter said about her 4-year-old daughter, Mom, she's biting her nails. It just drives me crazy. I'm worried she's got anxiety. I said, well, she might. You don't know. Don't worry about it now. It's just not a big deal. You can't make her stop. And she looked at me and she said, when did I start biting my nails? And I said, well, you were about 4.
What comes around goes around, my dear.
Yeah, it was so perfect. It was
Yeah.
just so perfect. Yeah, because you worry about every little thing they do.
Yes. Yes.
Now, the other thing I like to talk to working moms about, besides no one can be perfect, is the concept of being a good enough mother.
That is definitely
I
something we struggle with.
Yes, we all know that helicopter parenting is bad, that you can be too involved and hover too much and ask them to be careful all the time and yell at their coaches and be too involved at school. But being a good enough mother is a concept that I don't think we talk about enough. It really means that you do the very best you can when you're available. And you're not available all the time because you work and your work is meaningful to you, hopefully fulfilling. And that makes you a better person, which of course makes you a better mother.
Yes.
So, a good enough mother is someone who loves her children, advocates for them, helps them in every way she can. I was totally devoted to my kids every minute I was not at work in the hospital. And I never felt good enough I guess it took me about 15 years to recognize that I really was a good enough mother, that it was okay that I had missed some things. My husband helped me a lot with that. He kept saying, you're fine. You're fine. Just stop worrying about it. It's fine. And
Mhm.
so it is a difficult concept for us to embrace, but I think it's one that will help mothers today because we've got too much of this perfectionism ingrained in our culture.
Yeah, that is huge. It's one thing that I said, I'm not giving up myself. Like, I want to make sure that I have a career, that I am fulfilled. I will do everything I can to be the best mom, but I refuse to give up myself. And that's something
Yes.
so many women do. And they do it, and then they look back, and the kids are leaving the nest, and they have nothing to really lean on at that point.
Well, when you do decide that your career has meaning and that's what you want to do, I don't think it leaves you empty. I think it
Right.
leaves you full, not only of watching your children grow up and become independent, because if you're an independent woman, you're going to raise independent kids. It's
Exactly.
important to us, and that's what we do, and that's what we model. When I retired, now there was a short time, I'll admit, where I walked around the house going, oh dear, I'm not important. Nobody needs me. What's going to become of me? And then
Right.
I sort of got my head screwed on straight and I decided I had a really great career. I
Mhm.
really was fortunate. I had many good adventures. I loved what I did. I loved all the people I met. I loved all the parents of all my little patients. And I had enjoyed being a mom.
Yeah.
And I felt really gratified at the end in my 60s when I was able to look back on what I had accomplished.
Yeah, I love that. It's so beautiful to know that I really did make a difference and that I have added not only to what was my desire and mission, but also to my family. Let's talk about what women can do to have that identity within themselves, both as mom and working mom.
That's an excellent question. And it is the most difficult thing we figure out as
Mhm.
working moms. I think it's a process of recognizing you like your work
Yes.
and it gives you meaning, recognizing your skills as a mom, and that gives you tremendous meaning and fulfillment, and learning how to take care of yourself.
Oh, yeah.
I think that is the most crucial part of being a successful working mom, being a good enough mother. If I didn't strike out for a run in Houston when my husband got home and could take over with the kids, I would be grouchy if I couldn't go run 2 or 3
Mhm.
miles. When we were in Little Rock, if I couldn't go exercise with a friend of mine, it made my stress just boil over, and
Mhm.
I became short tempered with my children. I learned how to use my friends as support.
Yes.
I learned how to play music to calm down, a little bit of piano. I learned how to journal. That was always hard for me. I'm not a very good writer, although I do think I did a good job with my book. But journaling was difficult because it always engendered so many negative emotions as I was trying to write things down.
Sure.
But I gather that's really what it's supposed to do.
It is.
I had to learn how to meditate. And I'll tell you, I did something that was very meditative, but it wasn't meditation per se. I always worked on counted cross stitch. I
Mm.
had to sit
Yeah.
still. I had to, follow a pattern. I had to put in these intricate, delicate little stitches. And that made me sit and settle and center and be quiet and think about things. And it gave me a little bit of peace. So, besides taking care of yourself, using your friends, oh, there was another time when I learned how to really, really work on my marriage.
Mm.
I think having a good marriage or having a wonderful partner is crucial.
Yes.
When I turned 40, my youngest was 6 months old. We had new jobs, new house, new schools, 3 little kids, new nanny. I didn't do well. I
Mm.
thought I was just stressed at work, but my stress turned out to be postpartum depression.
Yes.
I couldn't sleep. I didn't eat. I was moody. I didn't want to take care of the kids. And there I was in the middle of the NICU going, I don't know what we should do. I couldn't make a decision. My brain was foggy and I had never felt that before.
Mm.
So a friend of mine said, you might be depressed. And she recommended that I talk to a psychiatrist. And I did. He put me on an antidepressant and we began therapy. And it helped so much. And during that therapy, my husband and I were I forced him to help me decide on what my priorities were.
Yeah.
I had to go through the clinical research project, the paper I was working on, the school responsibilities, the friendship, exercise routine, the volunteer group, the church group. And I had to decide which of those things needed my time. And I had to learn to set boundaries. And I'll
Yeah.
admit, there I was, 40 years old, and I had not yet learned to set boundaries. I was a yes person. I
Yes.
was a
Mhm.
perfectionist. I could do that. Oh, yeah, I'll do one more thing. Here I was, 3 children, working doctor full time. And all of a sudden, it just crashed in on me.
Most
And
women do not know how to set boundaries. That is one of the biggest things that I see come into session is that I just don't know how to do this. I don't know how
yes,
to be all of these things, seek perfection, not say yes, and still have that marriage intact. How
right.
did you do that?
Oh, there was a neonatologist who was maybe 20 years older than me. She was also married to a pediatric nephrologist. And she said, one of the most important lessons you will ever learn is how to say no. And I went, you got to be kidding. And she said, oh, no, believe me, it is the most important. And I used her as a mentor. I think that's another thing that we don't talk about enough for working moms. We all have mentors at work, whether we recognize them as such. There's someone around with a little more experience, a little more know-how, a few years ahead of you, maybe even 10 or 15 years ahead of you. And they are wonderful to use as a sounding board.
Yes.
They know the culture of your workplace. They know you, and generally they like you. That's why they're willing to talk to you. And they really can give you some pretty good advice.
Mm-hmm.
And I was lucky. I had a good mentor at Texas Children's, and I had a really good mentor in Austin at Seton and Dell Children's. I think my time in Little Rock was the rockiest because of the depression, and my husband loved his job and I didn't like mine. And so we really had to deal with, how are we going to find two jobs where we're both happy?
Mm-hmm.
And where will that be? And
Right.
so we worked through it, and it made us have a stronger marriage as a result of that.
Yeah. I think one of the things that so many professional women, especially high achieving professional women, deal with is, how do we put our marriage in the forefront while taking care of ourselves, while then taking care of our children, while then taking care of the career, in those orders, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
so can you speak to advice on how to do that?
Wow. Communication is key. I think that carving out time for your husband, doing things with just the two of you, having enough sex that your husband is not whining, complaining.
Mhm.
Those are important things. And scheduling time with your husband or your spouse or your partner is crucial. I didn't always do that so well. We learned how to do that through that difficult time, because it was the same time when Mars and Venus books came out.
Oh, yeah.
Men are from Mars and women are from Venus. Those books helped me so much, because I would come home from work and talk about my problems, and he would help me solve them. And I would say, I don't want you to help me solve my problems. I want you to just shut up and listen. Just listen to me. And he learned that when we went out to dinner, we would talk and he would listen, and he would talk and I would listen. And things got better when he tried to understand me. But I had to schedule date nights. We had to make ourselves talk and listen to each other. Having a good friend to bounce things off of is important. What does your husband do to deal with this? What does your husband say about this? There's so much to gain from having other women as support.
Yes.
There is so much. I had one really good friend in Little Rock, and she helped me immensely. In Austin, when I was in a job I really loved, and my husband had a good job too, it was much easier to build up a support group of friends. It's crucial. And I think your husband needs that too. If husbands are working too much, if our partners are concerned about their work, we've got to show an interest in how they're doing and ask them to tell us how they're feeling. Wow, after 38 years of marriage, I can say that I still believe men don't like to talk about their feelings.
No, I can tell you 100% they don't.
You have to really drag it out of them, or you
Yes.
have to almost guess. Are you really feeling this way? Or what are you thinking about this? And my husband, bless his dear heart, he finally got to where he would begrudgingly talk about his feelings. And so we were able to keep our marriage on kilter. So the answer to your question is communication.
Yes. It
and
always
enough
comes back.
sex.
And enough sex.
Enough sex.
Both of which work.
Right, right. Yes, that's true.
I love it. I hear so often from women about not being able to find balance, which for me, from what I do, from my perspective, I always remind people that within us, we have the ability to return to balance. That
Yes.
balance is not some outside elusive thing. We can create it within ourselves. But from your perspective, as a high performing, high achieving woman, what does balance look like from your perspective, and how can women find that externally?
I used to have to write things down in lists. I
Mhm.
would write out lists of priorities and it would differ from year to year. And the way that I found balance was to think about how I was spending my time.
Mhm.
What percent of my time was I at work? What percent was I at home? Was I working too many hours? Did I take on another project that I didn't really need to do? Were the kids having needs that I were meeting or not meeting? And then was there time enough for my husband? And so those are the three big pots, the work pot, the children pot, and the marriage pot. And it took me a long time to take me down at the very bottom of my list and
Mhm.
move it up to number 4.
To number
A,
4. Okay.
number 4. A lot of people say it should be number 1.
Mhm.
And I think I did really well when I got it up to there, right around 3 or 4. Balance is personal effort and a feeling that you are doing the best you can in your areas that you care about.
What a beautiful definition. That is excellent.
I think we feel balance when we're working enough and we're momming enough and we're close to our husband and we're not burnt to a crisp. We have time
Mhm.
to exercise, lunch with a friend, phone calls, whatever you do to take care of yourself, meditation, journaling, whatever. I think we feel it. I could feel balance. I could sure feel imbalance
Sure.
because that's where you're just like berserk, going
Yeah,
in any old
scattered.
direction when anybody pulls you in a different way. It's feeling that everything is less urgent. Does
Yes, I
that make
always,
sense?
yeah, I always say when you're not nurturing the chaos, right? Like when you're not really in it and you're nurturing the chaos of whatever it may be, and it may not be all things, but it may be one thing that you've got your eye and your focus on, and you're
Mhm.
nurturing that negativity, you know that you're out of the balance. And
Right.
if you can just bring yourself back into that place where everything feels calm, and at peace. And that doesn't mean that all the pieces are perfect. It just means that you have the ability to bring it back, shift, and sort of reset.
Right.
No.
Yeah, I think admitting what we need, whether it's space or
Mhm.
time or rest or spiritual attention or hugs and kisses, admitting that is the first step towards claiming the balance.
Absolutely. To the point you were talking about having your list. And one thing I personally do is I sort of challenge myself. Can I make a mission statement for this
Oh,
thing that I'm about to take on? If this new project or something that I'm putting my attention to, and can I meet that top of the list in the mission statement for that particular thing that I'm going to do? If I can't, it's not worth my time and effort. It's not going
oh,
to fulfill me and give me balance. So, if you're looking for balance and you're really struggling, maybe that's another idea too, to really bring that. And of course, it works in journaling too, but I
yes.
always do that.
Oh, that's a good idea. I never
Yeah.
thought about that. I mean, I've been in sessions at work where we tried to do mission statements. And I know some families that have used family mission statements,
Right.
but using it as a personal tool, that's a really good idea.
Thank you. Yeah, it's one that I I actually was, I'm very business minded, and obviously we do business things as, therapists and doctors and working women. But I thought, if I kind of look at my life from an outside perspective as a business, can I see how this may benefit me? And it's a great tool too. So, how can women show up for themselves and not feel guilt? Huge question, right?
The thing that mattered the most to me in not feeling guilty was having meaning and fulfillment in my work. Not everybody's lucky enough to be a physician and take care of sick babies, but we all find some meaning and fulfillment in our work, and feeling that also in my children.
Yeah.
More than in any other area. If I see my children thriving, it always gave me a huge sense of meaning, and it validated me as a mother.
Yeah.
So I think it's just recognizing that you cannot be two places at once. You cannot be everything to all people. You're best off doing what makes you feel joy, what makes you happy. And because if you're happy at work, happy in what you do at work, you're going to be a happier mother and a spouse.
Yeah.
So guilt, yeah, baby, but we're going to have to take that guilt and shove it because, women enjoy working, and some women are breadwinners and raise kids alone. And so it's just the way it is. And it's just the life we've chosen, and guilt doesn't help anything.
No, it doesn't serve us, certainly. And I think I see so often where women will break down their success based on not being able to give all of the things. We devalue and we're like, well, we're not good enough for this. We're not good enough for that. You were talking about that good enough. Can you elaborate a little bit more on being that good enough mom?
A good enough mother is there when she needs to be. Parent-teacher conferences, coach meetings, team performances, the swim meets, the soccer tournaments, the volleyball tournaments, orchestra productions. Those things have to be scheduled into your life. The ballet perform, whatever it is that your kids do. And I only let them do two things. Each child could do two things at once. And there's 6 days out of 7. But so you get to the things that are the most important. And then you do the things that are unexpected. Let's go play. Let's go to the park. Let's go down to the neighborhood pool and swim. Let's have a spend the night party. Let's have some spontaneity. I used to surprise my kids and take them to see a movie. And the girls love that. I used to take David to shop for video games, because that was his thing. He was kind of a computer geek kind of kid, but they didn't expect it. If you do something with your kids that they don't expect, especially one at a time. So you have 3 children, it's 3 times harder to do, but they feel so loved and so secure. Now, my youngest complained. She said, Mom, when you used to come home after a long call night and you were sleepy, I wanted to tell you about my day, but you wanted to go to sleep. And after your nap, you would wake up and ask me about my day. And sometimes it hurt my feelings that you wanted to go to sleep more than you wanted to ask me. And I went, oh, well, I'm sorry. There's no way I could do that. But so the child would say, the child is always first. But if you're exhausted, you have to take care of yourself first. I think a good enough mother takes care of herself first.
Agreed.
And takes care of her children whenever she is available, whenever she has free time, whenever she needs to play, whenever she needs to sing, whenever she needs to laugh out loud. Kids are the best stress busters.
Yes.
man, I had a really stressful job, and I learned very early on that my kids were so much fun.
Yeah.
And being outside playing was so much fun. In Texas, it's easy because we can get outside 10 months out of the
Exactly.
year. And child's play was one of the things I used to take care of myself.
Mm-hmm.
Running in the sprinkler, playing t-ball, riding bikes. It was just good enough mothers do what is necessary and what they love.
Yeah. I'd like to add to that too is learning when to shut off, right? And
Mm,
you said that when to rest, but when to shut off that business mind or even the kid mind at times, especially in these types of careers, you can always be thinking and formulating and trying to get to the next level. And you do have to know when they need your attention and you are a physical presence, but you're not physically there.
right. I am so concerned about the women who have been working from home during the
Yes.
pandemic,
Yeah.
working remotely, managing their job, managing their kids.
Mhm.
I can't imagine the distractions that they've had to deal with.
Huge.
Huge. I mean,
Mhm.
and for women listening, give yourself a big pat on the back for
Yes.
juggling all of that at the same time.
Hmm.
I mean, when you go to work, your kids aren't there with you generally. And so this has been a situation in which working mothers have been pushed to the limit.
Yeah,
And we need to give them quite a bit of grace and quite a bit of appreciation for what they've been through.
agreed. We talked about balance. I mean, that is the ultimate wrecking of balance completely. You're going from the bedroom to the kids' room to the laundry room. Okay, I have the lunch break, but I'm going to have to be on my computer. And
Mm-hmm.
there is no end in sight. And so, yes, grace, give yourself space and allowance to know, okay, now I have to shut it off. I'm going to be mom. One of the things that I always people made fun of me for was if I was at home working, I would have my door closed and I'd have a green post-it note on it. You can come in. Yellow, you have to knock. Red, don't even think about it.
Oh,
You
what a good
know,
idea. That's a
they
great
knew.
idea.
Yeah. So if you're
Yeah.
still working at home, get yourself some red, green, and yellow post-it notes. They work beautiful, especially when the kids are little. They understand
Yes.
that. So
Yeah.
great way. Great way to help yourself along. What do you think is the biggest struggle, obviously, other than balance or being good enough, that working moms really find themselves in?
Running out of energy
Mm,
and recognizing what that means.
right.
If they are going through the motions, if they aren't enjoying work, if they maybe even are dreading to go to work, if they feel less fulfilled than they were, think those things are signals that our cups are more than half empty, that
Hmm.
maybe we're running on empty.
Hmm.
And maybe working mothers who all want to be a good mother, many want to be a perfect mother, are running on empty and they don't know how to pull over to the gas station.
Yeah.
It's self care again. It's knowing yourself, knowing what balance feels like, knowing when you're stressed beyond belief and you're running on empty. That's so important.
Yeah.
Because there are times when mom's going to have to say, honey, I'm so sorry. I've got to take a nap. I am just exhausted, or I've got to get this project done. I promise you in 2 hours, we'll go do something. We've got to do something to take care of what's bothering us. And then we'll have the proper amount of energy and love and time for our children.
Yeah. Agreed. Agreed. That's so important. Self-care is more than going to get the nails done, or
Mm,
getting your hair done, which has become such this popular trend of, well, that self-care. It's not. It's not enough. It's great. It's not enough. You have to really take care of all of the mental, emotional, spiritual,
right.
physical aspects of yourself in order to be taken care of. And no one's
Mm,
going to do that for you, right? No one's
right.
going to come and be like, guess what? Today we're going to give you a full break. You may have a beautiful husband that wants to do that for you, but unless you ask, probably not going to happen.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Walks in nature have really been have always been nurturing for me. I don't know what it is about being in green, but there's something biological and we all benefit from it. And even if you're not a runner, and even if you don't have a place to go to exercise, you can just strike out and walk around the block. You can walk in your neighborhood, push somebody in a stroller, or walk to the park. It is so reviving. It is so freeing to just be outside and to let your biological juices flow. I mean, there are hormonal changes and neurotransmitter changes that occur by walking around in nature. And I must have figured that out early on. I've always liked doing that, piddling in a garden, pulling weeds, whatever it is, go where there's something green. And that's always something that you can do that will lift your mood and make you feel better. It'll give you that space. We were talking about the space that you need to kind of think about those priorities. So that was always an important thing for me.
I'm the same way. It's just recharging, right? The soul recharges.
It is.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's beautiful. I think there's one other aspect that I see a lot of, and I'm sure that you have heard as well or have witnessed, and it is that there are a lot of women that will hold themselves back and they take themselves out of the space of really being the working mom because they feel like if they do that, they're not going to be strong women. They're not going to be strong mothers. What would you say to the women who are listening that maybe have taken themselves out of the game because they feel like that doesn't make them good enough, but maybe they're thinking about something that they want to do? What would you say to them?
My daughter, when she was 8 weeks postpartum after her first child was born, she looked at me and said, "Mom, I'm really kind of bored." And I went, "Yeah, well, taking care of a newborn is pretty, routine." And the baby was doing fine. And she said, "I kind of want to go back to work." I said, "Honey, go back to work. If you want to work, go." She's a pediatric ICU nurse. That if you want to do something else besides raise children, you will be a better mother if you go do what you want to do, whether it's a business or nursing or teaching or physician or whatever. If you give yourself the ability to be a person in that arena, it makes you a better mother, I think.
I agree with you. And of course, no judgment to those that decide to leave their career and be stay-at-home moms. You are working moms as well, 100%. And in fact, I think that there are days that is harder than leaving and going to a job. True. Yeah. So no judgment whatsoever. We all have a role that we'd like to play. And either way, no judgment. It takes both to make the world go round.
Right.
It's so important, though, for those that really are in the boardroom or in the hospital or, in private office or practice or whatever it is, to know that we have the ability to find balance and be good enough and to definitely move forward. Other ideas, other thoughts that you have for the working mom and balance?
I think working moms do not get enough support from each other.
Yeah.
I think that we need to do more than just read and scroll on Instagram. We need to pick up the phone and talk. We need to have a lunch. That's easier said than done during COVID, but we need to connect. We need to nourish our friendships because that's what makes us feel really grounded. Another working mom in your situation, a peer, a colleague, is so supportive. And we always go, "Oh yeah, I know what you mean." And we do. We have this innate connection with one another. Working women have a sense about each other. And I don't think we use our friends as well as we might. And I want people to think about that. Friendships are like having a therapist in your pocket.
Yes.
Maybe an untrained therapist, but
It's fine.
yeah, because they'll say, "Are you sure?" They'll say, "No, wait a minute, you're lying." They'll tell you the truth. And so, if I made any mistakes when I got really, really busy, and then I would choose children when I wasn't at work, I was really busy at work, and I would choose children and husband. It was not maintaining my nourishing friendships. And whenever I came back to my friendships, it was like, oh, yeah, I remember why we're friends. And to begin with, we support each other. Yes. We understand each other. We get it.
And have that time outside of even husband, right? Because even if you have a friend that is friends with, a couple, continue to have that friendship outside of it too.
Exactly.
That's the ability to really thrive. I think that is something, you talked about getting into the last stages of your career and really feeling like I've made an impact. I think it's also important as we are deep in our careers that we also review and take a moment to witness the impact that we're making. Can you speak to that?
My mentor in Austin said I had decided to go off in a different area of professional development. I went into breastfeeding medicine and human milk banking late in my career. And my mentor said, how many things have you accomplished that you plan to accomplish? And we sort of went through them. And she said, and now you're adding a couple more things you want to do. Don't you think that you've accomplished quite a lot? And I said, well, actually, yeah, now that you ask me about it and I'm discussing it with you, I have really done what I set out to do, which was to be a good doctor. And I had accomplished many more things than just being a good doctor. I had written more papers than I expected. I had given more presentations. I was getting training in a whole new field of medicine. And so her asking me to think through my accomplishments helped me to see that I actually was doing a good job.
Yeah, it's so important to thrive in the experience.
Yes.
And to really review where you've been, not at the end of everything, but even sometimes just in the middle,
in the middle.
Like, yeah, go to that mission statement if you used it. Did you accomplish the goal? Did you get to a space that you feel fulfilled in the action? Really review, take that time. So many of us set goals and we think from the beginning to the end and we forget about the middle. That's the beautiful part. And really, what have you done? Where have you thrived? And what have you accomplished in that middle? The end's great. But that middle is really, really important too.
Right. People who are curious and people who go further with their professional development, I think stay happier longer.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like, if you want to learn something new, it just means your brain is just going in the right direction. I think curiosity for working women, for anybody, learning something new, getting a new take on something. Like when I went into a whole new area of professional development, I had to train myself in breastfeeding medicine and human milk banking. I volunteered at the Mother's Milk Bank of Austin, and I had to learn all of that. And it was so invigorating learning something new. And it was because of curiosity. And I see people who are curious, who read, who learn, who ask questions as some of the brightest people there are.
Yeah, I agree with you. When you shut the brain off and you think I've learned it all and there's nothing more that I can, achieve, I think that's when you start declining. And it doesn't matter what age you are. Right. I really think that's when you just sort of lose passion. I've always said I'm going to be 90 years old trying to figure out what I'm going to do next. And I think that there's something beautiful about taking that skill set further. Switch careers if you need to, right? Do what works for you. I think that the advice that you've given is so brilliant. It's something that so many of us need. I struggle with balance myself and I have all the skill set, right? Like I've got all the training, but I look at the calendar and I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, we've got baseball and golf and the things, and I have meetings and I have sessions, and I can get overwhelmed as well.
Mhm.
You talked about meditation. I'm a trained meditation instructor, which obviously, that's my beautiful jam as well.
Oh,
I think it's great. I think that, engaging in these things, you talked about journaling, meditation, running, friendships. Are there other ways that you know of that you can impart to us that will help us sort of be guided into a little bit more balance?
music is probably important.
Yeah.
I'm not very musical. I like to listen to music, and I played the piano in an average way.
Hmm.
I think some people are musical, and they would get great benefit from either playing an instrument or listening to music.
Mhm.
I'll tell you another anecdote. When I retired, I joined a bell choir, a handbell choir at my church. I always thought the music was so gorgeous. Actually, I must have joined it before I retired, because I remember I would wear my scrubs and I would leave work and scoot to the handbell choir practice. And I was a little nervous because I didn't know how to play handbells. But the second we started playing the music, it always carried me away.
Mm.
It carried me away from whatever stress I walked in the door with. And of course, I was trying to learn how to play properly. And so the process, although initially I thought it would be anxiety provoking, it was more calming than
Mhm.
anything else. Whether it was the camaraderie, whether it was the music, whether it was just getting away from work and home, it did something for me that was huge. It allowed me to go to another place. And so I think music needs to be on our list. That's coming from a non-musician. But
Yeah. I think you're talking about engaging in your creativity.
yes,
Yeah.
creativity. Yeah, I'm not a very creative person either. Cross stitch is about the closest thing I ever got to being creative. But
Well, music is a creative center in your brain. So I think that you
yeah,
did engage in that. So,
I did.
yeah, using the creativity that you have. And even if you don't feel like you're a creative person, that gives you
Well,
balance.
yeah. And get out the glitter with your kids when you're making crafts with your kids.
Oh,
How fun, whatever the Christmas crafts are, whatever the birthday craft party is, it's so much fun to
it
just
is fun.
glue and tape and glitter and twist. Oh my gosh, I miss those days. Those days are fun.
Yes. My kids always laughed whenever they would bring in something and they'd shake the glitter. I'm like, go outside. That is not happening in here, my friends.
And let her play with Play-Doh. So
You're a good grandmother.
I love being a grandmother. It's
I
so
love that.
wonderful. It's when mothers go full circle. It really is. It's the best thing in the world to watch your children be parents. It's something to look forward to.
Yeah.
You can't even imagine how wonderful it is.
I hopefully have a long time, but
Yeah.
I hopefully. Any other piece of advice, anything that you feel is necessary for women to hear that they can really take away, put in their pocket, use for that day that, maybe it's harder than the others?
I think believing in yourself
Mm.
is really important. Knowing yourself, knowing what you like, knowing what you're good at, and believing in yourself. It sort of makes you a little braver,
Yeah.
a little more creative, a little more understanding. I used to give myself pep talks when I was an intern and resident, and they must have worn off, because when I believed in myself, I knew that I could do a good job.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's important. I'm not quite sure how to teach that other than to bring it up and talk about how important it is that if you don't believe in yourself, it's going to hold you back.
Yes.
And that might be
roadways.
something, again, that you can bounce off of a mentor, talk through with a work colleague, a peer. If you have questions about your own abilities, sort through that, because it'll hold you back if you don't believe in yourself.
Yeah. And don't be afraid, and do have courage to ask. And sometimes you will be met with a, well, this is your weakness, but this is your strength.
Right.
And be willing to have the courage to take the weakness and use it to your benefit instead of hearing the
Yes.
negative, turn it into
Oh, yeah.
a positive.
We all have strengths and weaknesses, and a good friend or a mentor can point out the strengths way quicker than we can admit them.
Yes. So important to do too. It gives us that sense of balance. You know, if you know what you're good at, you know, is passion and fire and a driving force for you, you're able to create that inner balance while creating the outer balance as well. Our conversation today has sort of just scratched the surface of what you have done and what you're doing to support moms. I know you're really active on social media and you're even a published author. Do you want to give a little bit about that as well?
I love posting things that I think are important to working moms. My book is a memoir, and I wrote it in a way that tells not only the NICU stories and brave parents, but also my story as a mother and how I grew throughout my career. And as I had more children, all the challenges are in there. All the dirty laundry is in there. I have lots of episodes of where each child really put me through a trial, and I had to figure out how to help them. And I've told all those stories because NICU moms have always said to me, well, you're a pediatrician. Your kids are probably perfect. You've got everything under control. I said, no, my kids are not perfect. I do not have everything under control. That is false. No one has everything under control. And so I wrote the book to let working moms know that we all struggle through the same things.
Yes.
We all meet the same challenges. We all want to do a good job. We all love our children. We all want to do a good job at work. It is so communal, this feeling of being a working mother and doing a good job at that. And so I wrote the book to be reassuring to other working mothers. And I hope people will perceive it that way, not just a story of a lot of NICU babies and their parents, but also a story of a mom who just kept trying her best.
Yeah. I hear that a lot too. Your life must be perfect, or your children must be perfect. And you have all this skill set and you've taught us. I'm like, we're human. We're human. Like we mess up, we learn, right? We have days that aren't good. We have days that are hard, and it's just part of it. So I end every podcast, though I don't want to end this because I feel like we could talk forever and have a wonderful conversation. I end every podcast with the same question for each guest. And it is, could you impart 3 pieces of wisdom or give us 3 things that are working really well for you that we could take away and perhaps use for ourselves? What are your 3 things?
Writing about your feelings and your experiences help you to process them and make sense of them. Exercise is such a blessing. If you have a healthy body and you have the capacity to exercise, it's the single best thing for controlling your mood and your physical well-being, and loving and communicating with your spouse and your friends is important. So those would be my top 3.
Yeah. Brilliant 3. Some of the most important that we just really we don't focus on and we don't prioritize. So thank you for those 3. What a brilliant conversation to share with women, to be brave, right?
Oh,
be brave.
Yeah. It's been a joy. I've really enjoyed talking to you. And it does take a little bravery to be a working mom and to be a good enough mom. It does take a little courage, but I think working moms are doing a fabulous job, and they need to give themselves some credit for how hard they're working to make everything okay for all the people in their lives.
Yeah. And remember, your kids don't remember every single day. They remember how you made them feel.
Exactly.
What an empowering conversation, a conversation that is a reminder that we are good enough at all times, and that if we stay in our power, if we stay in our purpose and our joy, that we are the best wife, mother, and working parent. In fact, the conversation was so filled with so many great nuggets that I wanted to give you a few of Dr. Lander's wonderful takeaways. The first one is do what you can, because that's always enough. Leave the guilt to the side. Who you are, what you're doing, and how you're showing up is always enough. Be present in each task you're taking on, whether in the office or in the home. Remember to review your accomplishments as you are in them, not just at the end. Balance comes from self-care, nurturing yourself, and then your relationships. And to remember to use your resources and connections to your benefit. And finally, be curious and continue to learn, as this keeps you focused on your passion and keeps your mind young. Brilliant advice. If you would like to know more about balancing career and motherhood, follow Dr. Landers at Susan Landers, MD, and visit SusanLandersMD.com for more information about her book, So Many Babies. I hope you've enjoyed this episode and the brilliant tips provided. If you would like to continue the conversation and the learning, don't forget to turn on notifications to be alerted each week when a new episode of the Get Your Life Together Girl podcast is released. For daily inspiration, tools, and tips, follow me at Get Your Life Together Girl on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok, and visit GetYourLifeTogetherGirl.com. Thank you for listening and being a valuable part of this community. Please don't forget to leave a review, as it helps spread this message to others who may need it. Until next time, be kind to yourself and others.